Have you ever noticed how everybody seems to become a genius after the game? I was getting dressed this morning and I had one of those shows playing off on my phone. And I mean, seriously, I know we had a game last night, but the game is done. The play is over. The outcome is final. And suddenly everybody seems to know exactly what should have happened. All I heard was they should have called a timeout. They should have adjusted defense. This was the coach's fault. This was the player's fault. They should have shown up. They're a superstar. If it were me, I would have blank, blank, blank. Okay, sure. I get it. That's what people do, right? I remember, back in the day, we used to call it where, folks would have the big game on Sunday. They would come to work around the water cooler and have a discussion and a big debate. And that's what we called the Monday morning quarterback, where the persons who weren't on the field didn't have any of the pressure. They didn't hear any of the noise or the ridicule coming from the stands. But now, with this luxury of hindsight, they've got all the answers. But here's the real question. Why do we do this to ourselves? Why do we sit in judgment of our past decisions like we weren't the ones out there making a call, calling the plays, hopefully with the best info that we had at the time? It seems like I've been having many conversations with people like, good people, well-intended folks who seem to be revisiting the decisions they made months ago, years ago even, and dragging themselves through the mud for how things turned out. And look, I get it. It's easy to look back now and say, I should have known better, or I should have done this instead of that, or I can't believe I thought that was a good idea. But let's just pause for a second. You made the call based on the version of you that existed then, not the version of you that's listening to me right now on this podcast, not the one with all of the experience, the hindsight, the clarity that came after the outcome. You made the best decision you could with what you knew at the time. And that version of you deserves grace, not a guilt trip. Now, here was wild. And I was having a great conversation with a buddy of mine, a really good friend, and we go back and forth about a many of things. And I realize we've just kind of normalized this kind of judgment. We consume it. Don't believe me? Turn on any sports show, any TV you watch. They're not breaking down what worked. They're nitpicking every decision that didn't lead to the win. Same goes for politics, pop culture, business moves. Everybody's got a hot take after the fact. So guess what we do? We internalize that. We start treating ourselves and others like a losing coach. Like we're supposed to have seen every variable, every twist, every turn, all before it happened, like we had some magical crystal ball or something. We think being hard on ourselves, watch this. We've normalized and believe that being hard on ourselves is the path to growth. Like if we shame ourselves hard enough, we won't mess up again next time. But here's the truth. Self-criticism is not self-awareness. You don't get wiser by beating yourself up. You only get wiser by learning, stretching, growing, but all with compassion of yourself. So let me ask you something. Have you ever looked back on a moment in your life, whether that's a decision, a relationship, or maybe even a career move, and maybe felt a little embarrassed about how it played out? Or maybe shame is your right word, or disappointment. Now, not because you didn't care or didn't try, but because it didn't turn out how you hoped it would. Me too. But here's what I've realized. The outcome doesn't erase the intention. Just because you didn't get the results or they didn't meet your expectation, that doesn't mean your decision was wrong. Truthfully, it just means you learned something. And sometimes that's what's more important. The thing you learned is more important than the win you were chasing. See, the danger is always quarterbacking our past. Let me rephrase that. The danger with quarterbacking our past is that we start to fear the next play. We hesitate, we pause, we overanalyze. We become so afraid of choosing wrong, we end up choosing nothing. We jump on the interwebs, we try to gather more information. But guess what? You don't need more information. When you start to be so afraid to choosing the wrong thing, you do nothing. That's not wisdom. That's paralysis. And growth, have we talked before, doesn't come from perfect decisions. It comes from being in motion, from showing up, taking the shot, and adjusting as you go. Because when you are in motion, you learn stuff and you're supposed to reflect and adjust on it. So here's what I want to offer you today. What if we stop treating our past selves like they're failures just because they didn't get the outcome we wanted? What if instead we would say, hey, in that situation, you did your best. You were trying. I'm proud that you had heart. I'm grateful that you had hope. I appreciate that you were brave enough to choose and move forward. These are the things that really matter. And I want you to know, you weren't naive. You weren't foolish. You were learning. You were becoming. You were trying to actually build something that was real. And I want you to know, as I look at the landscape of me being able to interact with a bunch of people, that effort is sacred. Even if it didn't work out the way you thought it would. Even if the results didn't meet the plans that you set forth for yourself. So let's stop quarterbacking our past. Let's stop replaying those moments with shame and start reviewing them with grace. Let's start reviewing them through the lens of learning and growth. Let's look back not to criticize, but to honor what it took to make the decision in the first place. Because we know, hopefully we know, I'm going to let you know, you're not here to be perfect. You're here to grow. And growth often looks messy, especially in real time. So the next time that voice creeps in, you know what I'm talking about. That voice, the one that says, how could you have not seen that coming? Answered with compassion. I didn't see it coming, but I couldn't. I wasn't intended to. But I see it now, and I'll do different going forward. And guess what? That's more than enough. So stay kind to yourself. You're doing way what you think. And no matter what that outcome was, you were the one brave enough just to take that first step. So, as always, guys, I love you much.